Chapter 17. This venerable one's shizun got injured. This venerable one, really. What is this ghost mistress even doing? Being a mistress of ceremonies? Change your career and sell aphrodisiacs instead. Other people's aphrodisiacs could at best maybe make a wilted living person show off some male prowess, but these gods and deities were really something else. A slight wave of the hand, and even a dead person could get it up. How miraculous. Just as Moran was really getting into the show, Chuaning suddenly reached out and covered his ears. Eh? Said Moran. Chuaning's expression was frozen over. Don't look at such obscenity. But why are you covering my ears instead of my eyes? Don't look or listen, Chuaning said tonelessly. You can close your eyes yourself. Shizun, you really... Moran snorted. Take a look at your own blushing face. Even your ears are red. You're clearly the one who should be closing their eyes here. Moran couldn't help his amusement. Chuaning, who was as frigid as ice and snow and had never seen so much as a single erotic painting, having to witness a coupling at such close quarters now, might just make the man choke to death. The dead couple almost seemed to come alive as they screwed. Even their stiff throats, which shouldn't have been able to produce any noise at all, somehow started making lifelike moaning and panting sounds. Chuaning jerked his face away from the sight, too disgusted to continue watching. Moran's amusement only grew. With a mischievous grin and full teasing intention, he reached out to turn Chuaning's face back. Chuaning flinched away as if stung. What are you doing? Nothing whatsoever. Moran's voice was honey-sweet, with a hint of mockery as he looked at him. Aren't you too old to be turning red at this kind of thing? Oh, wait. It was more like Chuaning's face was turning green and red at the same time. Pretty hilarious, actually. Shizun, don't you teach us to always assess the opponent's capabilities before engaging them? You have to at least look to take the measure of the ghost mistress' capabilities. What's there to see? I'm not looking. Moran sighed. How's your face this thin? Filth and debauchery are harmful to the eyes, Chuaning shot back. Guess I'll have to look then. Moran lay there cheekily, peering outside and providing a running commentary of wow, awesome, ayo, and so on. Chuaning was so furious he was about to explode, and he hissed in a low voice, Look if you want, but don't talk. Moran played innocent. I thought you'd want to know. Chuaning finally couldn't take it anymore. Gripping Moran by the neck, he said through gritted teeth, If you make one more sound, I will throw you out there to feed the zombies. Okay, enough was enough. You really couldn't push Chuaning too far unless you wanted a full course of Tianwen. And so, Moran showed some discipline and obediently lay there watching without a sound. As the ghost couple's pleasure peaked, the male corpse let out a low roar and spasmed on top of the female corpse. A wisp of green smoke rose from their bodies, and the ghost mistress opened its mouth, greedily sucking the wisp down until every last tendril of smoke was consumed. It wiped the corner of its mouth with satisfaction, eyes shining. That would be the merit from the ghost marriage couples that increased its cultivation. Having had a taste, the ghost mistress seemed more radiant, and its beaming smile intensified. When it spoke again, its faint, drifting voice had become much clearer. It shouted, bellowed, sharp voice resounding, as if it could rip through the endless night. Get up! Get up! All you single men and unwed women, I grant you the blessing of intimacy. You shall provide me worship in return. Up, up! All of you, up! Moran's heart thumped. Shit. What was it planning to do? The simultaneous shaking of the hundreds of coffins around them confirmed Moran's worst fears. The ghost mistress was going to call on the couples and all the coffins to screw so that it could devour all the merits at once. This was no joking matter. Moran pulled at Chuaning. Shizun! What is it this time? Hurry, we have to get out of here. Shimei is trapped with that Chen woman. Moran was beside himself with panic. We have to hurry and save him. Chuaning glanced outside. Who would have thought the ghost mistress would have such an appetite, skipping individual pairings to gobble up everything at once? The neighboring coffins shook more and more violently as the ghost marriage couples inside were compelled to do the deed. Chuaning choked at the thought, color draining from his face even more than it already had. Just then, the beaming ghost mistress seemed to sense something. Its head abruptly twisted, and a pair of pure black, pupilless eyes passed over all the rest to stare directly at Moran and Chuaning's coffin. The ghost mistress might not have been smart, but it could feel the absence of familiar venereal energy from that coffin. There was no worship within that coffin. There was no... They were alive. Rearing up, the ghost mistress charged forward, shrieking, clothing in a flurry behind it, and a pair of blood-red, razor-sharp claws pierced directly through the wood and into the coffin. The attack was too sudden. Moran had no time to dodge or defend. Besides, there was hardly any room for movement inside the coffin to start with. Just as those bony claws were about to add 5 new holds to his head, he was shoved lower. Chuaning had swiftly gathered Moran into his arms and covered him with his own body. The ghost mistress' 5 claws sunk viciously into Chuaning's shoulder, deep into the bone. Chuaning bore through it without crying out, letting out only a muted groan. His uninjured hand glowed with a silencing spell as he pressed a finger to Moran's lips, blocking off the sound that he was about to make. The ghost mistress's claws dug into Chuaning's flesh, scratching and tearing. It had clay for a head, and it only knew how to distinguish between the living and the dead by sound. Somehow, in this terrible situation, Chuaning managed not to make a single peep, even as blood poured from his shoulder. Moran couldn't see the injury from where he was pressed against Chuaning's chest, but he could clearly feel Chuaning shivering. Alive or dead? There was no way a living person would fail to make a sound after this treatment. The ghost mistress couldn't make sense of things, and her claws in Chuaning's shoulders continued to brutally dig and tear. Chuaning trembled from the pain, shuddering, his robes drenched in cold sweat. Still, he did not falter. He bit down on his lips as he protected the disciple in his arms, as if he had really become a corpse, and blocked the opening in the coffin like forged metal. At last, the ghost mistress was finally satisfied that the people inside the coffin couldn't possibly be alive, and abruptly retracted its claws, blood splattered, accompanied by the hair-raising, sickeningly sticky sound of claws sliding against flesh and bone. All at once, the strength drained out of Chuaning's tense body. He let go of Moran, panting quietly. The scent of blood inside the coffin was suffocating. Moran lifted his head. By the dim light streaming through the holes, he could see Chuaning's lowered eyelashes, and beneath them, unshed tears in those silent, stubborn eyes. Those phoenix eyes were blurred with pain, but beneath the layer of tears, his gaze was fierce and headstrong. Moran wanted to talk, but Chuaning shook his head and maintained the silencing spell on his lips. A while passed before he let out a slow breath and wrote on the back of Moran's hand with a shaky fingertip. The barrier has been breached. Do not speak. Outside, the ghost mistress tilted its head, confused as to why it couldn't sense any worship from the people within the coffin, who clearly had to be dead, yet were somehow refusing to follow its commands. Chuaning raised his head to see the ghost mistress through the crack, a golden light enveloping his uninjured hand as a willow vine appeared, fiery light flowing through it. He narrowed his eyes, Tianwen in hand, and in the next moment he burst out from the coffin. The casket split apart, and Chuaning flew up like lightning. Tianwen lashed out with perfect accuracy to wrap around the ghost mistress's neck as it let out an ear-piercing screech. "Who are you? How dare you?" Chuaning's answer was one word: scram. Crimson wedding robes flowed in the air like waves of clouds. He had endured everything to make this one hit count, and Tianwen wrung with savage brutality, directly snapping the ghost mistress's neck. A dense red mist, mixed with a strange perfumed scent, welled out from the entity's severed neck. Chuaning drew back rapidly to avoid it, calling out, "Moran, 1,000 strikes!" Moran was waiting at the ready. At the command, he channeled spiritual energy into the hidden blade in his sleeve and directed the strike at the ghost mistress's body, which was groping around for its head. The body of clay cracked open, revealing within it the ghost mistress's true body, translucent and radiating a red light. Chuaning raised Tianwen again and ripped the ghost mistress's celestial spirit right out of it. A scream came from within that headless body. "How dare you! How dare you! Get up! Get up! Kill them! Kill them!" The originally featureless faces of the golden boys and jade maidens were suddenly illuminated with blood-red eyes. Hundreds of them shrieked as they charged toward Moran and Chuaning. The coffins on the ground also shattered, one after another, the corpses inside rising and rushing to join the fray. Moran's gaze darted rapidly between those in the crowd, looking for Shimei. "What are you doing making eyes at the zombies?" Chuaning said harshly. "Hurry and fend them off." In the chaos of the battle with the ghost mistress, they had ended up standing on a coffin, the slow-moving corpses gathered all around them. Moran lit up a handful of exorcism talismans and threw them forward. Explosion after explosion followed, but there were just too many foes. Each defeated wave was rapidly replaced by the next. Moran was losing his mind. How are there so many dead people in Butterfly Town? Just how many ghost marriage couples are there? Just look at this ghost mistress's cultivation. Of course this many young people couldn't have died of natural causes, Chuaning said, aggravated. 8, maybe even 9 out of 10 were probably bewitched to commit suicide. Attack over there! Moran flung another talisman in a direction Chuaning indicated. White bone and rotten flesh flew from the resultant explosion. How is this ghost mistress not dead yet? Normal weapons can't hurt it. Then what about Tianwen? Chuaning was incensed. Do you not see that Tianwen is still binding it? This thing is extremely fast. If I were to release the binding, it would be gone before I could even lash it. More and more corpses swarmed toward Moran and Chuaning. As Moran purged them, he kept an eye out for Shimei in the crowd, for fear of accidentally injuring him. A golden boy threw itself at Moran and bit savagely on the leg. He cursed under his breath and flung a talisman on its face before kicking it into the crowd of corpses, where it exploded with a loud bang. Do you see Shimei and Mistress Chen? Chuaning asked. Moran searched frantically before finally spotting 2 swaying figures in the distance. I see them! Get the hell over there and pull them back, as far away as you can. Got it, Moran answered, then paused. What are you going to do? I can't lift my other arm to summon another weapon, so I'll have to use Tianwen, Chuaning said, exasperated. I'm going to destroy this entire area as soon as I release the ghost mistress, so get lost if you don't want to die.